Hey, Dylan Fry, the real estate guy, here with Chris Thurman, the moving guy today. He's with Precision Moving, and we're going to get into it, talk about what you should prepare for if you're looking to move to the Kansas City area or you're just looking to move in general. Some tips on what you need to do when you're packing boxes, some things not to do. We're going to get into that, but if this is your first time to the channel, make sure you hit that like button. Also, subscribe to the page, and then hit that little bell so you'll get notifications of future interviews with different people around the Kansas City area that can help you out on your move, or just to stay up to date on neighborhoods, prices, everything that I'm putting out there so that I can help you make an educated decision. So with that being said, let's get into it today. Again, I'm Dylan Fry, the real estate guy. I'm a licensed realtor in the Missouri area, so I can help you with your move. But what I want to do is educate people about what's out there to help them make those moves really easy for them. And so today, like I said, we have Chris Thurman in here. He's with Precision Moving, and their moving company. They do an awesome job for a lot of the clients that I've had. So we're going to get into that. First off, Chris, tell me a little bit about your story. What's your family? What's your why? What's going on in your life?
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me, Dylan. I'm married. My wife, Dakota, I met her back in college. We have 3 beautiful children together, and they're 100% the reason why I started doing this.
Yeah.
I'm like everybody else out there, like looking for how do I make it? How do I make life better for them and everything else? And we settled on moving because it's the one thing I looked at and I said, we could do that better than anyone else. And we really are. So I've got 3 partners that also happen to be my brothers, and they had the background in moving. I had the background in trying to run a business and trying to figure out a way to monetize that. And more importantly, we all 3 felt the same of, if we can give a customer a better, a more honest, a more valuable experience, we're going to be successful. And that's what's happening. It's paying off.
Well, and I think that's with any business is as long as you get people out there and you can show them how they can trust you, that goes a long way. That's what I try to do with both by educating people with these videos, and then also when I'm out there listing homes or helping somebody look at buying a home, it's all about that trust factor, and you're trying to make sure that they're making good decisions. So even when it comes to their moves, you want to make sure they're making good decisions. So open up a little bit about that. What kind of things what are some things that you see in the market that you guys tried to change? Like, what are other moving companies doing?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing that any honest mover will tell you is there's a real issue with how moves are quoted today. And what happens is movers know that other movers are underbidding customers almost every single time. So when you're trying to do a move and you're looking for, well, who's going to be the best price? Who's going to be the best value? That kind of goes out the window when you choose somebody and they're out there and all your belongings are on their truck, and then they say, oh, by the way, because they know once they've hooked you and they show up on moving day, you're kind of stuck. So Correct. One of the things that we really do is we will give customers a ceiling. This is the highest we'll charge you. And some things a customer could look out for if they're shopping other movers and they're not using us, or if they try to use us and we don't have availability on your move day, figure out exactly what these other companies are going to charge you for. And here's a couple examples. They could charge you a flight charge. So for every staircase in your house, there could be a charge for that. They could charge you a long carry charge, meaning if there's not good or adequate parking space to get onto their semi-truck, especially if they're a van lines mover, you could be paying for that. And these are things that they may not necessarily bring up to you until they're out there in moving day. So one of the best things you could do is if you have a mover who's willing to do a walkthrough, that is always the best way to get your most accurate estimate.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is how do you go about quoting those quoting those moves? Are you looking at most of these moves, or are you doing quotes over the phone?
Sure. Well, I look at as many as I can, and thankfully, in today's age, we can do a video walkthrough. You can pull your phone out, you can walk through your house, you can show me your driveway, you can show me your steps, and you can show me what the layout of your house looks like, and I can give you the most accurate estimate. And I can say, listen, based off of this mood, I think you're going to need this many guys. I think it's going to take us this many hours. And I'm honest on the front end, but my customer may not know that. So what I will do is I will write up a binding estimate, and I'll tell them I won't be over this, but I could be under it. And I always overquote those. And that's something that a lot of folks are just not willing to do unless they have all the information. And I try to get all the information so our customers can make the most informed decision that they can. That's a huge piece, and that's not something that's really offered or volunteered as often as it should be from other carriers.
Well, yeah, because you see that a lot in whether it's real estate, insurance, moving, anything out there that you're doing. You see that all the time where people will give you the cheapest thing that they can offer, and then, oh, well, if you want that, then it's going to be this, after they've already got you to move forward with them.
Yeah, it's kind of the salesman part of it, right? And that's kind of the
Correct.
part that makes us have that when we hear like, oh, he's a salesman. We're kind of like, oh, okay. Which I kind of am a salesman, but one thing that I don't want to do is I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to spend a bunch of time giving you an estimate and then it being, wrong. And the other thing about us is more than your dollars for this move, we value our reputation because we know that's what's going to carry us into the future.
Correct. If you take care of people, people take care of you.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some things that people should be prepared for when they are looking to move. What are some things? So say you're about to go into a quote with somebody. What are some must-see things that you need to know about if they're looking at hiring you for the move?
Sure. So one of the things that people need to understand is large items can carry specialty fees. So if somebody has like a piano or a gun safe or a really heavy armoire or a wardrobe, right?
Yeah.
We need to know about those things because if any mover on the planet, you're going to get a specialty charge for that. Somebody may have a very simple move, but it still is going to have 4 people because of 1 or 2 items, right?
Correct.
So you always want to know that you get any of those kind of items in front of that mover and let them know about it so you can get an accurate quote. Because what you don't want is someone to come out thinking they only need 2 guys, see your gun safe, now they got to find 2 extra because that specialty charge will go up. The second thing is we've already touched on this, the outside access. How close can we get a truck to your home? Okay, make sure that that's disclosed. And then, really the third thing I would say to make sure you do is get more than one estimate. Because more importantly than that face value bid is who do you feel like you're going to work well with? Because moving is not a simple process. Let me rephrase that. It's not an easy process. It's simple, but it's not easy. And things can come up, and you want to have somebody that you're comfortable with, that you know is going to work well with you. And if you have a problem, you can get a hold of them.
Yeah, it will, and that goes back to, again, the trust side of it is having people out there that you can trust, and then you want to see those different quotes so that you can look at them, because if somebody's hiding a lot of stuff, you're going to be able to look at these 2 different quotes, and yours is very open, honest. Hey, this is our maximum, where this person's like, oh yeah, we can beat that.
Sure. Yeah, and some of the best priced movers are international van lines companies, but there's a reason that they're priced so competitively. It's because they don't load the furniture, they don't unload the furniture. They provide a truck and a trailer. Your stuff is bulkheaded off on the back of a semi. There may be 5 stops between where they pick you up and where they drop you off, and they're having to hire movers in that area to unload your stuff. So you don't even actually know who all's touching it. And then if there's damages, good luck trying to get, somebody to take responsibility for that. So just being well aware and well educated on who you're picking, especially if you're moving, across the country. It's just, I can't stress how important it is.
Yeah. Well, and I know that's one place that a lot of realtors that I've talked to, or even home buyers, homeowners, is one of the biggest things that they get concerned about is, how am I going to get all my stuff moved? Where do I go for this? And there's a bad reputation on some movers out there that, hey, my stuff's just going to be thrown around and whatnot. So what things do you think homeowners could do to prevent that type of stuff? Like, hey, what kind of stuff should they maybe, hey, you take these items or whatnot? Like, what are some
Sure.
some advice
Yeah.
they would do?
So, the be thing to do is to be on site whenever they do your move, whether that's us or somebody else. And if you see something that you don't like the way it's handled, let them know. The other thing for me is if you have a mover pack your items, okay? A full service move is the most expensive, but there's a lot of reason for that, because if we're packing it, we're loading it, and we're unloading it, we have that chain of custody the entire time. And there's no one but us to be accountable for damage. Whereas if you pack your boxes and a mover is rough with them, breaks it, something like that, you may run into a situation where they're trying to tell you, well, hey, this was improperly packed, right? But with moving, we're starting to see a lot of different options. You can pick as much or as little assistance as you'd like. So I have a lot of moves where the customer will lease their own truck, a U-Haul truck or something like that. We'll load the truck for them. They'll drive to the site and have other movers unload them. And there you can kind of watch and see exactly what's happening. So it's hard to tell on the front end who's going to be a good mover and who's not.
Correct.
But if you ask enough questions and you dig deep enough, you'll get a general sense of who you're talking to and whether or not you feel that if they do make a mistake, they'll at least hold themselves accountable to fixing it.
Correct. And I think that's a big thing on the review side. If you're looking at movers, you definitely need to be checking out the reviews. Make sure that they have good reviews. And again, it goes back to if there is bad reviews out there, if they're a great mover and they're really out there for their customer, they're probably going to try and get rid of those. Even if it's a bad situation, they're going to go and settle that, make sure that customer is happy in the end. So you definitely want to check the reviews. And I know that's a big process around your business model is you're trying to make every single customer that you come in touch with, make sure that they're happy.
Yeah, for sure. So, whenever we're business owners and we think this way, and I'm sure there's entrepreneurs watching this podcast, you hear, well, sometimes a bad review validates your business and it shows that you're real. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what also validates it? All 5 stars with more than just 2 or 3 reviews. If I can get to 500 to 1,000 5-star reviews, then I got to be doing something right. What I look for when I'm looking for bad reviews with the big mover is, are we seeing the same complaints over and over? Because sometimes, I'll be honest, guys, there is such a thing as a bad customer. And it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to leave a bad review. But if you consistently see the same message showing up, my stuff was damaged, couldn't get a hold of anyone. My stuff was damaged, couldn't get a hold of anyone. I was quoted X, and I had to pay way above it. If you see that all the time, well, that's a pattern, and that tells you that's probably not the customer, that's probably the provider.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, so reviews are huge. They tell you the story. They're one of the best indicators of what's going to happen before you book.
Yeah. So you've had a long experience with different stuff. I know you've got multiple businesses that you're tied into. And you've been working with General Public for a long time. So what is that? What advice would you give to somebody that's going through that process? They're looking at this move. I know you've seen people going through the move. It's all stressful. Moving your stuff and making sure that everybody's there. You got a timeline. What things would you give for advice on that?
Well, the first thing I would say, and I say this to all my customers, is moving it's a lot of things, but here's what it's not. It's not cheap and it's not easy. It can be cheaper and it can be easier. But what I would say is take a good hard look at what you want out of your move. And based upon the type of customer you are, what suits you best. If I'm talking to a single 25-year-old guy who lives in an apartment, you probably don't have a lot of high-end furniture. There's some really cheap ways you can move, and one of those is self-transport. And we can walk you through how to do that. You can lease a truck. Most truck leasing companies offer insurance as well, so your stuff will be insured. But if you're somebody like me, you've got a lot of furniture, you got a lot of ducks in a row, you don't have time, I'm looking for hassle-free. Because if I pay a lot of money, but I get exactly what I want, I'm going to feel better than if I try to save money and it costs me more in the long run. So ultimately, what I would say to a customer who's preparing for a move is do your research, look at how far you're moving, and look at 2 places. You can look for movers near you, or you can look for movers in the location that you're going to. right?
Correct.
And if I'm a mover based in San Francisco and I'm moving you from San Francisco to New York, it's going to be kind of hard to hold me accountable. If you're a mover right here in Kansas City and I'm trying to come to Kansas City, maybe give those guys a shot, because now when you get here, you're right on their back door. So there's so much to it, but really,
Well, and we have a lot of people moving in from the coast to the Kansas City area. Kansas City is a growing area, and it's right there in the center of the United States. So what you're talking about is if you have somebody in San Francisco load the truck, then get it out here, and then you guys come in and unload the truck. Is that
yeah, that's an option,
one of
right?
the
So
options.
if you want to do a self-transport, which is always the cheapest way,
yeah.
there's great movers who will load and pack that truck for you. You drive it, and then movers on location to where you're going can unload that truck for you. And but then the issue comes, well, am I capable or am I confident driving a 26-foot box truck or 2 or 3? But, I'm a money guy. You're a money guy.
Yeah.
Whenever I think about this, if I'm in, let's say I'm in California and I'm going to work with a California mover, may charge California prices, versus if I'm going to the Midwest where I know it's cheaper, why not start with a mover who's based there charging Midwest prices?
Correct.
Yeah, it's just a good, another kind of key to think about. And then the other thing is if you're using an international or a interstate mover, those guys all have to have DOT regulations. They all have to have an MC number, and they have to operate within those guidelines. That costs money. That overhead is passed on to the customer. So you really can save a lot of money and still have great quality moves if you can figure out a way to self-transport.
I get it. Yeah. Well, and then so what do you think that cost does come into when you're looking at? And I know it's all relative to where you're going, mileage and different stuff like that. But if somebody's looking at moving from the coast or
Right.
to the Missouri, or even from like Colorado to Missouri or whatever, what do you think they're looking at?
Well, I don't know how it equates and comes down to them, because every different company wants to make a different margin, right?
Yeah.
But here's what I can tell you. It would be cheaper for me to fly 2 movers to San Francisco, load you up, fly them back, unload you here, than it would be for me to just get them out to San Francisco in a moving truck. That's the same for everybody. Just think, if I'm a business owner and I got to have guys on the road for 6 days, customer, you're paying for 6 days of labor.
Correct.
That's one of the reasons that moving is so expensive. But what we try to do is we try to educate that customer, tell them, here's the pros and the cons of doing it this way, here's the pros and the cons of doing it that way, and we just want to come up with the best solution for you, and then that's where we'll give you your estimate.
And I think that's one of the best things about working with a company like yours is that you really out there to take care of the customer, make sure that you educate them on, hey, how can we handle this move that's the best way for you? Because somebody that's looking to move here may think, oh, well, because again, it's not out of their pocket.
Right.
It is if they want to pay for it. But they're like, oh, well, that's what you do is you should want to take my business and move me from here and drive that truck all the way to there. But then again, you just said that's 6 days. You got your guy in a truck.
Yeah.
You're probably paying for housing fees because you got to stop, and they got to have a place to sleep. So that stuff starts to add up. Where talking about that situation, not everybody's going to bring that up. They're not going to say, hey, let's fly the guy out there. We'll load the truck. You drive it back. Or hire somebody to drive the truck back. And then we'll unload it.
Yeah, exactly. So, we offer as much transparency as we possibly can. And when we do that, I think that alone kind of builds more trust with that customer. And then when we explain that and we give our prices, I mean, it makes sense. But when it comes to just knowing why a mover is trying to do certain things, or if somebody's telling you something with a move and it just sounds absolutely too good to be true, it probably is.
That's with anything.
Yeah, exactly. So,
with anything.
For us, every single customer matters, especially right now. We're a young business, but I think folks from our generation now we're used to every customer matters and every customer has a voice and they can use it. And that will tell the truth to everyone about your business. So now more than ever, we're in a world where we can hold people accountable to higher standards, and Precision Moving really wants to shine in that regard.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk a little bit about when should they expect. So let's say even if they're moving around the Kansas City area or anywhere in the Missouri area, I know you guys service a lot of different areas, but when should they be getting that quote? If they're looking at moving, how soon should that come into play? Because say I'm closing on the 31st of this month, I got to be moved. I got to have my stuff ready and go, and I'm closing on the 31st. When should I be calling you?
Yeah, in a perfect world, you really start to look around and put your feelers out once you know you're closing, right? But a lot of the times we get folks calling us and asking, hey, can you get me this week? And, everything does have a price as well as convenience. So sometimes we're just simply too far booked up. If I'm trying to move today, I want to call and book my move at a month in advance. That's the best way to do it, to guarantee you're going to have either some flexibility in their schedule or some flexibility in yours. And in the summer, I'd probably call a month and a half.
Which is difficult because
Yeah.
we, on the real estate side, we deal in 30-day increments.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get people, like a lot of times they don't know they're moving until, hey, and then they have 30 days.
Right,
And
exactly.
figure all this out. And
The day you accept that offer, get on the phone.
yeah,
That's what I do. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't find a mover or that you won't have the availability. But if you're somebody who's like my wife and everything's got to go, peaches and cream smooth, give yourself at least a month.
well, it's better to be proactive than reactive.
Exactly. And you're going to be able to rule out some movers too, maybe just based off how, they treat you on the phone when you don't book.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good
Yeah. I mean,
indication as well.
you're gonna get to talk to people, and you're like, hey, I'm not going this day, and then they keep harassing you and stuff like that, or oh well, I can go a little bit cheap. Cheap is not always the best. If somebody's fighting that hard for your business, there's sometimes there's a reason behind that, and what they're trying to do is one indication I always see is if they can't walk away from it, there's probably a reason why they can't, because they've treated people and they don't have the following. Where I know that's one thing that you guys do is you treat people very well, you take care of their stuff, and then you get referred by them or referred by I know you guys partner with some companies. And so let's talk about that. So yeah, I know a lot of people go into like U-Hauls and they say, hey, I need to move.
Right.
How do you help me? So what does that look like for you guys?
Well, one fantastic thing about U-Haul is that U-Haul provides a service. It's called movinghelp.com. And this is a list of movers who are affiliated with U-Haul, and you can book their moving services within reserving that U-Haul truck. And we are in Columbia, Missouri, which is where we're technically based out of, but we service Kansas City. We're the highest ranked mover on that site. So as far as being able to have people who refer you, it's a huge testament to what you do. There's a lot of ways to find movers. There's a lot of ways to find varying levels of whether it's full service, specialty items, things like that. And if I'm looking at a mover and they can do everything, and I call them and they're like, well, are you ready? Do you want to book now? If you're calling me and you're saying, hey, I haven't even sold my house yet, and then I'm trying to get you to put a date down, so like you said, that's a huge red flag. But just be aware that a really good mover is going to be really busy.
Correct.
And we've had a lot of customers that I really wanted to help out, and I just couldn't. Now, that being said, if you've got a mover you're set on, and they're open, and they do, like we do, work on a Sunday, a Saturday, a Sunday. Saturday's the busiest moving day of the week. Sunday is the most dead, right? And you got to pay a premium to move on Sunday, but there's ways to get it done for anyone. And one thing that we will do is we will work with anybody to the fullest extent that we can to try to accommodate them.
Yeah, and you just got to ask those questions. Like,
Right.
when can we do this? I really want to go with you. Can we make this work?
Yeah. So one thing that we do a lot of the times is a move and a hold. And a lot of the times what we need to do is somebody's closing. They don't get access to the new house until the next day, but they got to have their stuff out of their house. So we do what's called a load and hold. And we do this locally all the time. We'll come out, we'll load your truck, we'll hold your truck on one of our lots until the next day or whatever time when you have access to that new house, and then we'll show up. And the other great thing is you're in the realty business. We don't have control over that title office. We don't have control over that final walkthrough. We don't know what's going to happen until it's done. And if they got a good realtor, they're going to do a final walkthrough. So we know when you tell us, hey, we're closing today. We got to be out of this house by this time, into this house by that time. We mark off that entire day for your move because we know that there's a chance we have to be flexible.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's one piece that I didn't really realize is that you guys actually will hold stuff for people if they have conjoining closes, because that's one of the biggest issues that comes up is we're looking at, hey, we're closing on this house, but then we can't get access to this one until tomorrow.
Right.
And that freaks people out because they're like, what am I going to do with my stuff? Am I going to have to do a double move?
Yeah. So, we'll do a holding charge all the time. And then the great news is, and it's kind of related, it's kind of not, one of the things that goes really well for customers is unloading is easy. Unloading is fast because we're not piecing together and packing this truck so we know everything's going to be nice and tight. We're just taking it out and we're putting it where it goes. So when we do load and holds, we actually give you a 3-piece quote. Here's the time I think it's going to take to load your truck. Here's what we charge for the hold, which is a flat fee. And here's what I think it's going to take to unload that truck. And believe it or not, we've actually done a load, a hold, and then an unload right back in the same house because that final walkthrough did not go through as planned.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So, and then us understanding the kind of situation that puts the customer in, we do what we can for them. They've had a very bad, disappointing day already.
Correct.
And then a couple months later, we were able to complete that move for that customer.
Well, and I think that's one thing that people need to be cognizant of is when you're planning for your move and you want to work with your realtor, but you want to make sure that you do that final walkthrough kind of before they put it on the truck. Like that's
that's a good thing to do.
Make sure everything is according to plan. Yes, I want to be calling you as soon as we go under contract. Hey, these are the dates, but you have to remember those dates are tentative. And you guys work with that stuff all the time, so you guys are aware of that. But if you're looking at buying a house or selling a house and you're making that move, you need to realize those dates are tentative and they could move. You've got inspections, you've got appraisals, you've got all this stuff that's coming out, and then final walkthroughs. I know I talked to an agent the other day that said final walkthroughs are getting as scary for him as the inspection day because they don't know what's going to happen. Somebody walks into the house and you say you removed a picture and you've got all your stuff packed up or whatever, and they see something and they're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And that's something that comes into play a lot. And people back out of contracts. And then it throws off everything. So you just want to make sure that you get all that stuff completed. You're aware that everybody's going to close on time, and then but you do have to have your stuff out of there by the closing time.
Yeah, and a lot of times you have to have your stuff out of there for your final walkthrough because customers don't want to walk through and see a bunch of furniture and then say, how are you going to get this out by 3 o'clock in the afternoon? It's 11:30 right now.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing that an agent that I work with just had this situation. They went to final walked through the house, and it was still a mess. And they were like, and they did it the day before, which I try to do with all my customers is go at least the day before closing, and do a final walkthrough. And they went through, and they were like, "We're closing at 8 a.m. tomorrow," and they're supposed to be out. How's this going to happen? Well, then they ended up having to negotiate a possession after close,
right?
Which then ended up going past that possession after close, and they ended up with a nightmare to where they ended up having to help the client find somebody that could remove junk because they left a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. If I'm a seller and I'm selling a nice piece of property, and especially if I've got equity and I know that I'm going to come out pretty good, which happened a lot last year, then I'm probably going to have that mover set up to do a load and hold the day before closing. And then if something happens to where you can't close, you just unload it right back there. Not a big deal. You're going to move anyway. The odds of that happening are so little, but I'm the kind of person where I'd rather be prepared. And
Correct.
again,
I do think if you get down to the final day, a lot of times 99% of the time you are going to close. So that doesn't scare me as much as just making sure that the final walkthrough has been done.
yeah, and then 100%, it really comes back full circle to who did you talk to and who did you deal with that you felt you were going to be able to work the best with.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Well, and that's one thing that I go back to that. I didn't even realize that was an option, like to do for movers to be able to hold your items for that day. Because that's one thing we run into all the time is they're like, oh, when do I need to schedule my move for? And I'm like, hey, you got to talk to the movers and see what's best for them. And people, I know people that are panicking, and that's why I always say it's going to be stressful. It's going to be the next 30 days of your life are going to be, you're going to do a lot of packing. You're going to do a lot of panicking. And then when we're done with it, you're going to feel a sigh of relief.
Yeah, for sure. And, I'll tell you, the best compliment that we ever receive is whenever we're done and our customers say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got it done that fast and got it done that clean. Everything looks great. We'd hire you 1,000,000 times over. And that's what we live for. That's what we strive for. And it's a funny thing, but we really do get passionate about moving. And me and my two brothers, we speak every day, and it's usually about a really big piece of furniture, a really heavy item, something that we did that we knew, hey, if another company did this, these folks would have had to pay $2,000 for just getting this safe out of this basement, and we did it for less money with a smile on our faces, and, that excites us, just making people happy.
Well, and if you find companies like that genuinely love what they do and they're not just in it for the money, normally you have a pretty good experience.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's something that I never thought I would have been very passionate about. I'll be honest, I got into it for the money based off what they were telling me. But then as I learned how we do it and how we piece it together, every day we're solving a puzzle. But more importantly, we're solving a big problem for somebody.
Yeah.
And we know how to do it. So it's like for those 3 or 4 hours or those 2 or 3 days, it's like we're the men. I'm the man. And that's a nice feeling.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's awesome. So, with that being said, let's back up just a little bit, and let's say they're packing their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that they need to do to make sure that move goes according to plan, and you're able to pack the truck the way you need to? What's the best way for them to pack all their stuff up?
Sure. So here's the biggest thing that we run into that's a big problem: boxes that are overfilled and you can't shut them. Okay. Moving 101 is what we like to do is we like to build a nice uniform box wall. So make sure you don't overfill your boxes. If that box can't close, that's a problem for a mover. The second thing is small glass items, things that are very easily breakable, lamps, light shades, things like that. Don't expect that to be put on the moving truck. Okay. Here's a list of things that no mover is going to touch or put on their truck. Anything flammable, any chemicals, all the stuff under your sink, your Drano and your soap. We don't like to mess with that stuff, especially if it's been improperly packed and it comes open and now it leaks down through that box onto the rest of your stuff. We won't move plants, especially if you're using a long haul moving service. They're not going to move your plants because your plants are going to die. So these are things that nobody will really even mess with. And then always ask about disassembly and reassembly. A lot of movers won't reassemble certain furniture because there's a huge liability risk. And as you know, and I know, me coming from an insurance background, I can kind of understand that.
Yeah.
So just having in-depth conversations with your mover about your expectation on the unload as well. Unless you specifically ask for reassembly, most movers is just going to sit your stuff on the floor and say thanks, because a lot of the times you don't even know where it's going to go. How are they supposed to? But if I'm self-packing all my glass stuff, all my breakable stuff, I'm probably going to sit that aside and I'm going to try to transport that in my own individual vehicle. Now,
I gotcha.
if I pack your kitchen and I'm packing your glasses, I know I've got the right packing paper. I know I've got those things wrapped the correct way. I'm going to put them in the box. We're going to mark it as fragile. That's going to go on the top of the box wall, push back in the truck where nothing can hurt it. But if I don't know what's in that box,
That makes it difficult.
it makes it very difficult. And then if that box winds up on the bottom or in the middle because it was misplaced by the mover, now you're in an argument. Well, this wasn't really packed correctly anyway. Well, you're the movers. You should have known that. You didn't have me pack it. So if you're going to pack yourself, I would say anything glass, anything, like what I was speaking of earlier, lampshade stuff that there's not a great way for this to ride. Don't expect it to ride. Just put it to the side and, And then, of course, anything valuable, money, antiques, things that are of high value to you, I'm not going to really want to put it on a moving truck if it's going across the country. If it's, here in Kansas City, house to house, not as big of a deal. Just make sure you've got it in a well-marked box that you can account for as soon as it's off that truck.
Correct. And let's talk about things not surviving the move. So let's get into that because I know we've been talking quite a bit about this moving stuff and everything, and I see why you've grown to love it because I get intrigued every time we talk about it. And when you go out there and you see something, it's a little bit older furniture. What are you telling the customer about? Hey,
right. So there's certain things that we can take one look at it and we're just not going to move it, or we're going to tell you specifically, we're going to have you sign off, hey, we're not going to insure this thing. Because if you have old particle board, my nemesis, if you have an old particle board like a bookshelf, or if you have like one of those particle board IKEA furniture things, then those are notorious for just not really doing well whenever it's packed in a truck. And generally what we look for is base pieces, big desks, end tables, dining room tables, couches. These are all things that we know can support weight.
correct.
Especially my couch, it supports a lot of weight. So you put a bunch of boxes on there, you put a bunch of pieces to create that nice foundation. If we see something that we know there's not a good place for it, we can't put it on top, it's not going to support anything on bottom, I'll tell people, I'll move this for you, but it's not going to make it. And there are some things that just won't even make it out the door when we pick it up. You got to be honest with yourself, and expect we'll pay on anything that we break that we said we could move. And damages, that's another good thing to bring up because what is a mover required to do for you? Well, in the state of Missouri, and for most international, it's 60 cents a pound for damages. So if you've got a 65-inch flat screen TV, doesn't weigh very much, and it gets damaged, 60 cents a pound. That's the base rate. Now, a lot of companies will provide you additional insurance at an additional
Correct.
charge, but the way that we do damages ourselves is we will settle with you at the end of the move. We'll say, well, what do you think it takes for this to be made right? What do you think is a fair price for this? We'll get online and look it up. We scratched a refrigerator door one time. Mistakes happen. I can go on and on about how we should have done it different, how we could have done it different. Stainless steel door got scratched. How much should we pay for that? Well, we found the part number, looked up a brand new refrigerator door online and said we can order this refrigerator door for you if you want, or we can pay you about half that value. Customer decided that the scratch wasn't that bad and took the cash.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are very, very
Transparent.
adamant about if we break it, we'll buy it.
Well, and I think that comes back to the honesty factor. Is you guys are running an honest business that you're trying to take care of people, and when you do that, it pays dividends, and that's why you guys are the number one moving company in your area, on the U-Haul records, and that just comes from taking good care of people and making sure that you if you have something that's damaged, and then you need to discuss it. You can't. You can't just get mad and say, "Hey, I'm going to go make a bad review," because nothing gets settled at that point in time. You gotta talk about it. If you've got issues, I think that goes with any service that you're getting completed and you're paying somebody money for it. They're going to assume that you're happy with it unless you address it.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes back to anything. If you're looking at, say you're an entrepreneur out there and you're paying somebody for marketing and different stuff like that, if you don't tell them that you don't like what they're doing, they're going to continue to do it thinking that you love it.
Exactly. And, one of our reviews, I believe it was on the U-Haul carrier site specifically, praised us for how well we handled its breakages. And I was like, I wish you would have said something different. But then I got to thinking, I said, you know what? That's, again, one of those reviews where we said earlier are validating. A bad review is a validating review. Well, we got a bad 5-star review. Hey, these guys messed up. They broke this piece, and then they settled it and were more than fair. Would use them again. How can you beat that?
Well, the thing that people need to remember throughout your home buying or selling process is everybody involved in this process is human.
100%.
And you are going, I tell people this every time I talk to them. If you're looking at buying or selling a house, it's going to be stressful. Bad things are going to come up. Be prepared.
Yeah, and it's always good to have, I myself have bought a couple houses, and any realtor who's kind of been one that I said, this is solid. We've gone through the house, and he's told me, I don't like this, I don't like that. You should be prepared for this potentially. If this happens, we'll get it worked out. But it's not always sunshine and rainbows. It's not the most perfect, flawless process. But if you have somebody who's really in your corner and they're going to treat you good as a customer, means they're going to treat you good as a human, they're going to be honest with you regardless of if it's good or bad news.
Well, and I had that situation come up yesterday. I went and showed a house, and we were looking at the house, and the customer, one thing that customers or that clients can get a little bit confused on is this house good? And they'll gauge it by how clean it is. Mm-hmm. And because sometimes you go look at houses and they are kind of a mess, and then other times you'll go into this super clean house. But as well as I know, walking through a house and I walk over to the floor and I start pressing on it, and it's got soft spots over here, it's got different stuff going on over here. I'm looking at it, I really can't see the foundation, but I'm like, so yesterday we're walking through this house and I stepped on a spot. It was pretty soft. I said, well, that's either wood rot or there's some termite damage going on, and I felt it in multiple areas. And I'm like, something's going on.
Something bad.
Bad. And we got outside, and she's like, I think this one is better than this other house that we had looked at. The other house was dirty, but it was fundamentally sound. There was some smells, and some other stuff that went on. And I straight up I said, this house is a lot worse than that house. Like,
yeah.
Even though it's clean and everything here, you're going to have way more in repairs in this house than you are in that other house. And she's like, really? She's like, but I think this one's better. And I'm like, from my professional opinion, I would not advise you on this one because all the issues that I found, and it is empty.
Yeah, and it's so easy for you to say, yeah, this one is better. Let's go make an offer. Let's get some paperwork going. But the fact that if you have somebody who's not doing that, that's a huge deal because, listen, whatever, generally speaking, we've got a good judge of people. And generally speaking, I know a lot of folks like this. Sometimes you just want to hear what you want to hear, but sometimes it's just not the case. And if I've got my realtor telling me, hey, no. If I've got Dylan Fry telling me no, then I'm running the other direction.
Well, and a little bit on our background, we met because we used to work for the same company. I used to work for the same company, and we dealt a lot with life insurance. Definitely. And that's where I learned that skill of, hey, somebody's got to tell you the bad news. One of the big things that I used to talk about all the time is the death rate is the same in Missouri as it is in Texas.
Yeah.
100%. Everybody dies.
Everyone. 100% of the time.
You've got to be aware of that. And it comes down to the same thing with houses. Like, every house is going to have to be repaired, and you have to be able to tell somebody in their best interest, this house is going to take this much repair, and I don't think it's a great investment just based on your situation.
Yeah. And, you know,
And that sucks because that's money off. Like, that's money off of my table.
yeah, listen, I can tell everybody listening to this, nobody ever wants to not seal the deal and close the sale, right? That's the best day for us. The best day for me is whenever we get the yes booked on the calendar. We're ready to move you. Awesome. We won. We get on the phone and we say, we booked a real nice job. It's great. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's not worth, hey, we booked a real nice job under false pretenses. Now it's going to turn into a real unhappy customer. And then at the end of that, no one's happy.
Correct.
So, you know, if somebody's telling you bad news before you start, that's a trustworthy person.
Yeah.
That's just the case. That's
a
just
good
the
spot.
truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you coming out. I think that a lot of people can gain some value, whether they're moving to the Kansas City area, they're moving over in the Columbia area, they're moving anywhere. They can get value from the conversation that we just had about how to prepare for your move, how to make sure that you're getting the best quotes out there, and then what things you need to be looking for the move. But before we go, give me your elevator pitch. Why should a client, if they're looking to move, why should they look into your company?
Yeah. So, the top 3 reasons I would say to choose Precision Moving is we are a small company. And with a small company comes big accountability. We live and die by your opinion of us. We don't have 50, 60 years of, back before people could vocalize opinions of bad practices or anything like that, that we can lay on. The second thing is, if you want to deal with the owner, he's right here. We'll talk to you. We'll work with you. We'll be flexible with you, and we'll always be transparent. And then it almost goes like against what I've been saying the whole time about price and value, but for what we offer, there's absolutely no better value on the market. And all of our movers, we pay them very well, so they care. It's not just a job to them. It's not just a 9 to 5 to them. Sometimes we have moves not go our way and we're out at a place until 1 a.m. We got a smile on our face. We're getting it done because I value my employees. I value my customers, and we really, truly care about what we do. And I think that's rare.
I think that's huge. Take care of people and they take care of you.
That's right.
That's definitely huge. Hey, if this is your first time watching the Everyone Needs a Guy podcast on my YouTube channel with Dylan Fry, the real estate guy, make sure you hit that like button on this video, then subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell so you'll get notifications of future videos. Chris, I appreciate you coming out, giving everybody that's watching a ton of advice and helping them make their move as easy as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.